Okay, I'm going to do a little bit on the feet. And I did a video of this a week or so ago, and the battery ran out on the microphone, and so 2/3 of it was me talking without any sound. So I'm sure it'll all be clearer and better this time around. But the feet are really important. They're where you connect to the ground. Changman Ching said to swallow the chi of heaven and to tap the earth's strength. And so the way we tap the earth's strength is by our connection to the ground. So how you relate to the ground is how you're going to relate to the rest of your body and the space around you. Maggie has said, treat the ground tenderly. If you treat the ground tenderly, then you can be responsive and tender to the world around you. If you aggress against the ground, then you will aggress against the space around you, against the other people that you meet. So really pay attention to what's happening in the way you connect to the ground in your feet. So this one's going to be a mix of me talking and of me asking you to do this along with me. So start out doing the bear. This is a do-along part. And as you're doing the bear, really feel your feet on the ground. Really try to feel what it's like down there in your feet. Don't just think about your feet from your head, but really feel them. So feel the feet on the ground and see if your feet are staying quiet, even as the weight shifts in and out of them, or if they're noisy and wobbling around. You can see now I'm letting my feet wobble around. So try to feel the feet stable and steady on the ground as you're doing the bear. So the feet are really complicated. There's a lot of bones in them, just 20-something. There's a lot of joints in the feet, 31 different joints in the feet. The feet are really complicated. And so it's too much for us to actually deal with. So we actually simplify it in Tai Chi a couple different ways. One of the first ones is talking about the tripod. So these are the weight-bearing bones in your foot. The heel, the ball behind the big toe, the ball out behind the little toes. So those 3 points form what we call a tripod, and you should have all 3 points of those in contact into the ground at the same time. So doing the bear again, standing here, and feel each of your feet. Start with your left foot, and feel the heel, feel the ball behind the little toe, and feel the ball behind the little toe. Now do your right foot. Feel the heel, feel the ball behind the big toe, feel the ball behind the little toe. And now shift all your weight over horizontally to the right, and watch what happens as you do that. You can see that my feet are rolling on the ground here. I've lost the ball of the left foot, the ball behind the little toe of the left foot, and I've lost the ball behind the big toe of the right foot. Come back, feel all 3 points in each foot in contact, shift horizontally to the left, again until your feet roll, losing the ball behind the little toe in my right foot, losing the ball behind the big toe in my left foot, and come back to the center. So you actually have all 3 points of the tripod in connection with the ground. And do the bear again, and really feel that those 3 points are staying in contact with the ground. Don't let the turning and the shifting roll your feet. So even as the weight falls into one leg and the other leg is emptying, I keep the 3 points of the tripod in contact. Weight shifts into this leg is emptying, keep the 3 points of the tripod. And if you twist and you turn too far, you'll detect that in your feet because they'll roll. So really pay attention to the feet on the ground. One of the first steps for us improving skill is becoming aware of what we're doing. We call that conscious movement. So in order to do this, you need to really be aware of what your feet are doing. And you want to feel like those 3 points of the tripod are in equal contact with the ground. Now, I believe biomechanically, most of the weight drops into the heel, then the ball behind the big toe, then the ball behind the little toe. And so if you're able to perceive the distinction between 40 to 50% of the weight dropping through the heel, another 30% dropping through the ball behind the big toe, and the remaining 20% dropping through the ball behind the little toe, great. For most of us, we just need to feel all 3 points of those, all 3 of those points in contact with the ground in a way that feels equal. So really keep that. It's the ball behind the little toe that people lose a lot. So try to get that. Another thing that happens is when we step. When we step forward, we step heel first. It always goes down. One of the things that will happen is students will try to step too far. They'll be stepping away from what they can do, and they'll step out with the ball of their foot first because their bodies aren't organized right, so that this feels like a big step. You need to always be stepping when you're going forward with the heel first. So just standing here in the V stance, step out with one foot, heel touches, and then put both points of the ball down on the ground at the same time. And shift back a little bit so that both points of the ball leave the ground at the same time. And let the foot go down. Both points of the ball touch the ground at the same time. Change. In the V, step forward. Heel first. Sink, so both points of the ball touch the ground at the same time. Standing up, moving back, both points come off the ground at the same time. Sit forward, both points touch the ground at the same time. Coming back, both points come off the ground at the same time. So you can practice this in, say, the deer. So just doing the deer with me a little bit. Step forward, heel, both points touch, you shift, you come back, bring the foot back. Step with the other side, heel, both points of the ball touch, shift, come back. Once more on each side, heel, both points of the ball touch, shift, and come back. Heel, both points of the ball touch, shift, and come back. Now, part of why I'm picking the deer is that a thing that often happens is with all this focus towards the front, people lose their rear heel. So as we're doing the deer, you step heel first, both points of the ball on the front foot touch. You shift forward and turn, extending your antlers. Make sure the rear heel isn't lost so that you don't end up like this. In Tai Chi, when we're delivering power, usually it comes from the rear foot out through the body, and you want to make sure you don't lose the rear heel. This isn't like throwing a softball or a baseball where you would throw and pivot and throw the rear heel out. You need to keep that rear heel in connection with the ground so that as you go forward, there's that solid line from the rear heel out to where you're sending the energy. So the deer is great for this. So do it with me a couple more times. So shift, make sure you keep the rear heel. Come back. Step, heel, both points of the ball touch at once. Shift, make sure you keep the rear heel. And come back. Step, heel, both points of the ball touch at once. As you shift, make sure you keep the rear heel. And back once more. Step, heel, both points of the ball touch. Shift forward, rear heel. Stay here for a second. And now feel that line from your rear heel up through the body all the way out to the tip of the opposite hand's middle fingers. So do that a second, once more on each side. Step, both points of the ball touch. Come forward, stop here. Feel the line from the rear heel all the way up through you to the tip of the middle finger of the opposite hand. Come back. Step, both points of the ball touch. Shift, rear heel is connected, line from the rear heel all the way up to the tips of the fingers. So I'm not going to spend this entire video on that, but at home, practice these things. Practice doing the bear, keeping all 3 points of the tripod connected. Practice doing the deer or the 70-30 bear or anything else you want to do, ward-offs, and making sure that the rear heel stays connected. So that brings me to the next point, that we need awareness of the heel, the ball, when we're shifting. What often happens, that I often see happen to students, is, let's see, which way do I need to face? This way. No, I'm facing the right way. Sorry. As I'm coming into ward-off left, students step, and as they shift for the final posture of ward-off left, they lose their rear heel. So let me demonstrate so you can see it. As I come forward into ward-off left and I'm finishing, I lose the rear heel and the body pushes the heel out. And this will happen all over the place. After ward-off left, just on ward-off left, and now I'm stepping for ward-off right. As I shift into it, at the final moment, the rear heel will push out. Now, this is usually a result of two things. One is the lack of conscious movement, so that's why I'm wanting to get you to have awareness in the heel and the ball. And then more importantly, a technical error of not stepping with enough width. So watch me when I do this in ward off left. If I step and there's enough space between my heels, see the width here, when I come into ward off left, there will be room for me to pivot on the heel and bring the rear foot around. If instead when I do that, I step narrow, see how my heels are almost in a line here. When I shift forward and I start turning, there just physically isn't enough room. So then you will have two choices. One of them is to twist the body, which puts tension and tightness in the body. The other is to allow the rear heel to push out. Doing it this way, when I step without enough width, you can see I'm turning. Right about here, I'm out of room. And so what happens is the body will adjust and push the rear heel out. So if you're aware of turning on the heel versus pushing the heel out, you'll notice that. And what happens, I think, is there's so much going on in the form. These are difficult steps, and there's noise in the body through the tension that people are just unaware of whether or not they're pivoting on the heel or not. So when you practice, do your form, do a first third, and really pay attention. Every single 70-30 in the form, if the rear foot needs to turn, it turns on the heel. We never do this. Never. Never means not any time. So there is no 70-30 in the form where you come into it and at the last minute the rear heel gets pushed out. So now some of you watching this may not know whether or not you're pivoting on the heel or not. So I'm encouraging you to really pay attention, use this as a guiding principle in your practice, and notice if you pivot on the heel or if you push the heel out. And then you can ask yourself the question of why. Why did the heel get pushed out there? And it's almost always the body trying to accommodate. You haven't given yourself enough space, and so the body does its best to try to get you comfortable. So really pay attention to this, heel versus ball. There's another concept that I'm going to introduce, which is based on a saying. And the saying is that the heel has the meaning of root, the ball has the meaning of mobility. So when we stand here in play guitar and put your front foot out, and now feel the heel connected to the ground, and notice that it's a real connection to the ground. Some people talk about this posture as being a 90-10, 90% of the weight in the back, 10% in the front. I don't think that's quite accurate, but what it reflects is that connection to the ground through the heel, because the heel of my empty foot here has the meaning of root. And now take White Crane. I picked these two because you don't have to change the feet at all. In White Crane, it's the ball of the foot connected. And so the ball is there, and it's really easy to pick your foot up. So this is absolutely 100-0. If you come back to play guitar, feel that quality of contact through the front heel, and change to White Crane, and notice how the foot is different when the ball is touching. Now, when it's the ball touching, both points of the ball should be touching. The foot doesn't roll, so it's only the ball behind the big toe, one way or the other way. And when I do White Crane into brush knee, and I turn here, it's still both points of the ball. I don't let this foot come with me as I'm doing that. So both points of the ball, and then the heel touches. I sit down, both points of the ball touch at once. I come into my brush knee. I'm going to pivot on the heel of the rear foot. So making sure you get that. So that's two places, the heel, the ball, and then the toes. And make a distinction between the ball and the toes. So when we're in something like White Crane, it's the ball of the foot that's touching, so across here, not the toes. This isn't ballet. I'm not on point. So I'm not reaching down with my toes. I'm touching with the ball. In Tai Chi, when the toes are the only part of the foot that's touching, that's a signal to us that it's time to step. So when you're doing this, we do this with the hero stroll a lot. You'll step forward, the heel touches, do this with me. Both points of the ball go down. You come forward. As you stand up the front leg, you gradually allow that motion to peel the rear heel off the ground, but the ball of the rear foot is still touching. I sit back, Heel touches. Now I can shift underground. I sit back further until the ball comes off the ground. Both points of the ball come off the ground at the same time. I sit down so that both points of the ball touch. I come forward. I stand up, peeling the heel off the ground. The ball is still touching. At some point as I stand up, the toes will be all that's left, and that means it's time to step. If instead you do this when you stand up and you allow it to go to the toes, the leg will slacken. See what happened to my leg there? It fell. I came up, I'm on the ball, and then I let it just go to the toes, and you'll feel all the life and energy goes out of that leg. Do this with me. Come forward, stand up, gradually peeling the heel off, feeling the ball connected, and then let the leg just go slack so it's just on the toes. Now when you step, you have to grab that leg and step. So that means you have to use force. What you want to do instead is come up. The ball is touching. As soon as it goes to the toes, you allow the foot to step. Heel touches. Both points of the ball go down together. You shift underground. You stand up. I'm not going to do the rocking back and forth because I just want to do the stepping. Stand up. The heel comes off the ground. The ball of my rear foot is still connected. Go ahead and let your foot slacken. Not that. So come back. Come forward, stand up, ball is touching. As soon as it's the toes, the foot steps. So you can practice the hero's stroll, and this is actually an exercise that gave me personally a lot of understanding into the feet. And it'll show you the difference between the heel, the ball, and the toes. Another great place is right after turn and strike with heel, when you're doing the brush knees. So again, I need to make sure I pivot on the heel of the rear foot. I sit back. As I sit back, the front foot ball will gradually come up. Both points leave at once. I sit down. Both points touch at once. I'm shifting. Now this is the part. As I'm doing this, gradually the heel comes off the ground. The ball is still connected. I don't let the foot slacken. And then I release it. Toes, heel, both points touch. Forward. Sitting back. Both points of the ball come off the ground. I turn my waist. That turns the foot. Both points go down at once. I'm coming forward. The rear heel is coming up. Both points of the ball are still touching. It's toes. It's time to step. So in class, we will often practice just doing these walking 70-30s for the brush knees, going around in a circle. We might shoot a video of that someday. Going around in a circle doing that and really paying attention to the way the feet work. So this has been a ramble about the feet. The way you relate to the ground is the way you're going to relate to the space and the people around you. So if you have what Wolf has called an attitude of hardness relating to the ground, which can happen if you blade the foot. If you allow yourself just to use the inside of the foot, then that's a blade and that's an attitude of hardness towards the ground. That will reflect in an attitude of hardness towards the world around you. If instead you can treat the ground tenderly and gently, you'll be able to have that bring you out into the rest of the world. Technically, as you're working on your conscious movement and your awareness of your feet, pay attention to the tripod and really watch for places where it rolls, where the feet are rolling around on the ground rather than staying steady. Watch for that every place. Distinguish the heel from the ball. The first place to do that is going into a 70-30, noticing, and don't give yourself an out. Oh, I did pretty well, I turned on the heel, and then the last bit, the heel moved just a little bit, but I don't have to pay attention to that. I'm going to pretend that didn't happen because I started out pivoting on the heel. Oh yeah, it moved a little bit, but we're on to the next one. No, be demanding on yourself and make sure that when you come into the 70-30, it's really on the heel all the way. So distinguish the heel from the ball. And then notice that the ball is different from the toes. So when you're stepping, you're going to come up on the ball. When it's toes, it's time to step. The great thing about that is it tells you when to step rather than you having to figure it out. You just have to pay attention. Ball, toes, oh, step. So work on this awareness of your feet on the ground and the technical aspects, the tripod. Heel has the meaning of root, ball has the meaning of mobility. Ball is different from the toe. Working on those technical aspects then will change the way you relate to the ground, and it'll change what's going on in your form. So that's a little discourse on the complicated part of our body that connects to the ground and the desirability of spending real time with it.